I give you Stephanie Ruhle of MSNBC versus Bret Stephens, conservative, who writes for the New York Times, on Bill Maher's show Friday.
My fear is that she doesn't really have a very good command of what she wants to do as president. It's not too much to ask Kamala, say, are you for a Palestinian state if Hamas is going to run that state?
I'm not, I just said I'm not going to vote for her. Kamala Harris is not running for perfect. She's running against Trump. We have two choices. And so there are some things you might not know her answer to. And in 2024, unlike 2016 for a lot of the American people, we know exactly what Trump will do, who he is, and the kind of threat he is to democracy.
The problem that a lot of people have with Kamala is we don't know her answer to anything, okay?
But you know his answer to everything.
And I don't think it's a lot to ask her to sit down for a real interview as opposed to a puff piece in which she describes, like, her feelings of growing up in Oakland with nice lawns.
Then I would just say to that, when you move to Nirvana, give me your real estate broker's number and I'll be your next door neighbor. We don't live there.
It's Nirvana. If you can get the Democratic nominee for president to say where she stands on the issue, that's never going to be attainable. The cluelessness.
I mean, imposed by elites in the media like her, right? This is a very important clip because what Stephanie Ruhle is pretending to say is that anything Kamala Harris can do would be better than anything Donald Trump would do. He is such a threat that just getting rid of him, it doesn't matter what she does, right? You know, this is not what's actually happening, though. What's actually happening is that she is convinced, Stephanie Ruhle is convinced that a Kamala Harris presidency will be very good for her. And by good for her, I don't mean on abortion, because I don't think she's going to need an abortion. What I mean is it's going to be very good for her bottom line, just like the Biden presidency has been actually very good for rich people. If you own property, if you have a stock portfolio, you know, the economy is doing very well for you. If you are part of the elites, there was really nothing wrong with the Biden presidency from your point of view. They opened the border, so you now have 15 million illegal immigrants to hire at your beck and call to do service industry jobs that now pay a fraction of what they used to. And
they won't be moving into your neighborhood.
That's exactly right. They're not going to be moving into your neighborhood. You're not going to face any of the negative consequences because you're not competing with them for resources and you're not competing with them for jobs. You, as the elites, are the consumers of this labor. So this was all great for you. And that's the important thing to notice here is they are pretending to consider Donald Trump a threat because he is a threat to their bottom line. He is a threat to their power. He is a threat to their ability to rob working class Americans of wages and give them to illegal immigrants. And they pretend that this is about higher ideals like democracy, when at the end of the day, it is about their economic interests. A Kamala Harris presidency will be very good for the rich. It will be very, very bad for working class Americans who see in Donald Trump a champion for their futures and the future of their children.
Okay, so well said, Batya, as always. The latest example of this, just her hubris and refusal to speak to anything, and in particular on the issue of immigration, which is so foundational and important, as you just point out, was espoused, was made clear by Axios and Alex Thompson, a reporter over there, who had a report pointing out that in 2019, when she was running for president, she pledged a series of executive actions that would unilaterally give so-called dreamers, 2 million of them, a path to citizenship, right? The dreamers are those who arrived as minors to the United States, like brought over by their parents, and they were illegals and they've never attained legal status. And this has sort of been an issue that's been debated for many years now. What do we do with the so-called dreamers, given that name by people who want them to attain citizenship here? And so she wanted to do by executive action an amnesty for all of these people. That's controversial. This stuff can be done. It needs to be done with the support of the American people and a congressional vote. So they went to her and said, do you still support that? And do you also support this related plan that would shield more than 6 million illegal immigrants from deportation? You'd give 2 million Dreamers a path to citizenship, and you'd shield more than 6 million from being deported. Asked this week whether she would take these same executive actions, quoting here from the piece, her campaign declined to answer. They declined to answer. Asked if she had time for a brief interview to discuss her Dreamers policy, Harris's campaign declined to make her available. This is an outrage. I can't laugh, and I can laugh at almost everything in the news. This is a true outrage that they are getting away with saying, I won't tell you where she stands on these issues. I won't tell you whether she still stands by her 2019 extremely far left positions. And then the media, good for Axios for reporting it, but then the vast majority of the media just says, or you get the Stephanie Ruhles saying it would be nirvana to picture a world in which we could actually know these answers.
Yeah, it's really horrifying. The Democrats can't actually answer on immigration because their base, which is the college credentialed elites, want the open border and benefit from it in real economic terms, but they need swing voters in order to win, right? Who want a secure border and a future for their children, which you cannot have when you have a limitless supply of low-wage labor. And so they literally cannot answer the question, which is why she's not giving any interviews. I think there's a real sort of crisis in terms of what she understands about the policy she's supposed to be pushing, but also they only stand to lose by making a policy clear. And unfortunately, the elites in all of these different industries are helping her with this because they too know that they don't want anybody to know that they benefited from and totally support the open border because they know you can't win an election with that. Immigration is so important, Megyn, because it is really the dividing line between the elites and the working class. If you have a college degree, if you work in the knowledge industry, if you are a person who relies on the English language and credentials to get and keep your job, you will never be threatened by a person illegally crossing the border who doesn't speak English and doesn't have a credential. In fact, you will employ that person, and every service that you need to keep your fancy life going will be cheaper for you because there are more illegal immigrants. That's the top 20%. That is their economic agenda, and the Democrats, of course, are playing right into it. And meanwhile, if you are working class, if you are one of the 60% of Americans without a college degree, who does the jobs that we rely on to survive, who drives a truck, who looks after old people, who looks after young people, who's a teamster, who's an electrician, you are threatened, of course, by people who are coming here who are going to be directly competing in 5 or 6 or 7 industries, of course, whose wages are plummeting because now employers like that factory owner in Springfield, Ohio, has their pick of the litter of, from 15 million newly arrived illegal immigrants who they can pay much less, who they don't have to give, leave to, who they don't have to ensure breaks or good working conditions or safe working conditions to. Of course, they're going to pick them. And so this immigration question is the dividing line between the two classes in America. And I'll just end with this, Megyn. They are always calling people racist who point this out. It's racist to want a future for your children. It's racist to want to protect the wages of the hardest working Americans who we rely on to survive. Do you think that working class Black men think it's racist to say, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't have paroled 200,000 Haitian immigrants into this country and given them work visas? Of course, they don't think it's racist to say that. In the Democratic coalition, Black Americans are the most anti-immigrant people because they understand that, yes, they are coming for their job specifically. And this is something that every Democrat understood until 2015 when they had to do a 180 on this because they couldn't stand that Donald Trump was speaking up for working class Americans.
It's so true. Or the Black Americans who couldn't get into their community center because they were stashing illegal immigrants in there because these cities are so overwhelmed now. And if they object, they're racist too. They're xenophobic, whatever it is. The Americans, I think, are really getting past these labels and just ready to fight. I mean, I was thinking about these issues and how I would prioritize the one I'm most upset about if Donald Trump were to lose. Like if it's November 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th, depending on when we actually have the vote counted. That's the number one. As deeply as I care about what we're doing to children and the trans issue, I do think the immigration thing is just far worse, just given the sheer numbers of Americans that it's affecting. Children, women, everyone, in terms of, forget like just the trafficking of the women and what's happening to the young girls and the rapes and all of that. But once they get into this country, it's not all of them, but there are too many taking too many jobs, fundamentally changing the country, who will never assimilate and have no desire to. And on top of all that, I've got news for the elites who probably look at me and think I get them and I'm one of them. I've got news for you. If you think this is all great for you, take a listen to Aaron Heitke, former chief border patrol agent for the San Diego sector, who testified before Congress last week on how many illegals he had tracked who crossed the border, who have ties to terrorism, and what the Biden-Harris administration told him to do about those numbers. SOT 13.
In San Diego, we had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism. Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border.
He was told to cover it up. Don't let the American people know how many dangerous illegals are crossing into this country. That's just the San Diego guy. Let's get all the border guys under oath and find out what they were told and try to figure out how many terrorist-linked illegals have crossed into the country, something Kamala Harris, I assume, also will not answer, since she won't even answer for her far less controversial allowing of the Dreamers to stay in the country. This one, is she going to answer this one? Obviously not, and no one's going to ask her either. Did you know that there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right, there is still a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months in office. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like we did during COVID. But there is hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax-advantaged status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar even further. Protect your financial future now by diversifying. Text MK to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.